Thank you very much, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to hour 20 of this year's 24 Hours of Reality, 24 Reasons for Hope. The sun has come up here in New York City and all around the world. The audience has been growing. We're very excited to break these records of people tuning in, and also the social media impressions are just off the charts, and that to me is a reason for hope. But I want to talk about the 20th reason for hope in this year's 24 hours. China, the world's largest carbon polluter, is now also a leader in clean energy. After many decades of reckless pollution resulting from their rapid economic development, China has realized that low carbon development is the key to a prosperous future. Driven by leadership from some of the country's top officials, China is a powerful example of what can be achieved when national governments make environmental protection a top priority. This really is a reason for hope. We have to put it into perspective, because along with this good news, there is also bad news in China. They're still building new coal-fired generating plants. They still depend on coal for the majority of their energy. As noted in the previous hour, China is dealing with an air pollution crisis that comes directly from the emissions related to coal burning. Some have called it the air apocalypse. It has very dire health consequences as well as environmental consequences, and it has political consequences, because there are many reports of protests, even violent protests, that don't always get reported in the Chinese media, but definitely are taking place. And there are reports of people trying to leave the heavily polluted cities, and members of the Chinese diaspora that return to China to take part in their economic miracle, deciding that they couldn't put their families through those levels of pollution and then leaving again. So for those reasons, as well as a desire to provide leadership in solving the climate crisis, China is under a good deal of pressure to do the right thing. There is no doubt that what they have done on the investment side in developing and building more windmills and more solar panels than any other country by far represents an impressive achievement and the 20th reason for hope. Let's look at some of these facts. The huge investments are undeniable. Wind has now become China's third largest energy source behind coal and hydroelectric power. We are seeing on the solar side an absolutely astonishing record. This last year in 2013, think about this, China installed 12 gigawatts of solar electricity. Now, how do we compare that? Well, it's a record for any country in 1 year, but their annual installation of solar represents 3 times the total solar capacity of the United Kingdom, and almost equals the total solar capacity of the United States, installed in 1 year in China. And the plans going forward call for much more solar and much more wind. So this is really a very hopeful and encouraging sign. Now, this is a statement by the CEO of one of the leading solar companies, who has a record of being right in his predictions and projections. And it's interesting that he believes that within 2 years, possibly 3, the levelized cost, the real true market cost of electricity from solar photovoltaics, will be equal to the levelized cost of electricity from coal-fired generating plants in China. Now, hearkening back to one of the first hours in this 24-hour program, there is in markets a very big difference between more expensive than and cheaper than. And when a new alternative for doing the same thing suddenly becomes cheaper than the old way of doing it, then the forces unleashed in the marketplace are often irresistible and unstoppable, because it's like the difference again between water that is at 32 degrees and frozen into ice, or 0 degrees in Celsius, and water that is 1 degree above freezing, and all of a sudden it's liquid. Markets are the same. If the option is more expensive and doesn't seem to be attractive in the marketplace, the markets are frozen up. But once it becomes cheaper, then markets are liquid. Investment flows in, customers are buying, manufacturers are feeding the demand. And when we get to this point where solar electricity is equal to or cheaper than electricity from coal in China, then it's Katie bar the door. We're going to see a whole new round of this renewable revolution in China. In the second quarter of this year, the one that ended in June, China spent $19.3 billion US on clean energy investments, setting an all-time record. It's incredible that they're putting this kind of resources into renewable energy. And we've seen a chart similar to this before. Actually, this is the first time we've seen this one. This just shows what has happened to China's solar electricity production capacity. Again, one of the things about these technology curves that can fool people is you go for a very long period of time. This is just starting in the mid-90s. You go for a very long period of time when there seems to be almost no change. There actually is, but when you reach the inflection point and it starts going upward, then it accelerates. And because we are more used to linear change, we are frequently surprised by these kinds of curves in the computer industry, the mobile phone industry, and now in photovoltaics. So this is a very powerful reason for hope. And you look at the production capacity they have built, they can turn these things out in very large numbers. And even though there have been complaints about dumping and violations of trade laws according to the case made by the U.S., maybe that's valid. I'm not taking a position on that. I haven't studied it that closely. But I can tell you this, a consequence of what they're doing is that the cost of these solar panels has been going down all around the world. And China's investment has had a lot to do with it. And they're putting people to work, as we talked about in the last hour. And everywhere you go in China, you see this incredible miracle. Same thing with wind energy. The same kind of curve. It seemed as if there was no change of any significance for a long time, and then it starts shooting upward. It's absolutely astonishing. And the wind capacity that has been put in place, both onshore and here offshore, which is a major new resource for many countries, because offshore the wind isn't as variable in many offshore locations. It's blowing almost all the time, so it's almost like so-called baseload energy. But just look at the sophistication of this technology and the kinds of jobs that are created. It's extremely impressive and very encouraging. So the fact that China is making these investments not only in solar photovoltaics, not only in wind, but in the world's most impressive network of fast trains, the world's most impressive network of smart grids, the largest investments in new energy storage capacity, and a host of other areas. This is a form of leadership that is making a difference and is inspiring hope in the world. Now again, they have other reasons why they feel pressure to do this. And they're also feeling pressure to continue building these coal-fired generating plants. And when you dig a little deeper into what's going on in the Chinese industry sector, you find that there is a difference in the point of view expressed in Beijing by the national leaders and some of the regional leaders who have over time developed very close ties to some of the industrialists who still depend on coal-fired generating power. There are incredible stories coming out of China about struggles between the central government in Beijing and the regional leaders who are very close to these carbon polluters. And there's an old and by now kind of famous saying in China, kind of an aphorism. How does it go? The mountain is high and the emperor is far away, meaning that these regional leaders, while they pay their respects to the central government, have over the centuries learned that they can kind of go about their own business in their own way if they're careful not to offend too much. But in the age of digital communication, it turns out that the emperor is not that far away after all. And this new president, Xi Jinping, is an unusually powerful president within the Chinese system. He has consolidated power. He apparently understands how to exercise it with considerable skill. And by making such a priority of this investment agenda in renewable energy, he is also now fighting corruption in a very high-profile way and thereby gaining more tools to convince these regional leaders that they better follow the party line, which really is the party line. And so we're beginning to see an historic shift in the balance of power between regions and the central government in China compared to what has been the case in the past. Now, that has implications for how well and how smoothly China can accomplish this historic revolution toward the adoption of renewable energy technologies. I'm very optimistic that the United States and China now have a much improved relationship that has fostered much more effective communication on the climate issue. I give Secretary of State John Kerry a tremendous amount of credit for assigning a top priority to the climate issue and to building this new and better relationship between Washington and Beijing. And when you put that relationship, the upcoming Paris meeting in December of 2015, in the mix, the possibility for the two largest polluters to work together for a change, and we've seen signs of that already, this in context, in combination with China's massive investment in renewable energy, is the 20th reason for hope.